Wfia Management Committee, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Notice of resignation from role of Assistant Secretary and Wfia Management Committee. It is with great sorrow that I write this letter of resignation. This letter details my reasons for leaving, and I have considered this action in light of the Quran and Sunnah. This masjid has so much potential to further benefit the community, but personal agendas are getting in the way of progress. Alhamdulillah, by the grace and mercy of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, I managed to do some good work before I joined this committee 8 years ago, and my sole purpose of joining was to increase the good work that could be done. There have been many successes and events where we worked as a team for the benefit of the community, alhamdulillah. There were disagreements too, but we worked through them. However, recently, there have been some major issues that are simply not acceptable and against the benefit of the masjid and against the interests of the public. Below I have listed the main problems occurring in 2021, which I have already raised in many meetings, so I have already tried to change things from within. These issues are against the interest of the masjid, the public, and do not abide by the rules set by Islam. Everything below is factually true and can be supported by written documents, like masjid minutes, and I ask Allah Jalla Jalaluhu to prevent me from even slightly exaggerating any issue. 1. Qari Mahmoud al-Hassan. When Qari Sadiq Zai left, Qari Mahmoud took on his role. Committee meeting unanimously agreed to increase Qari Mahmoud's pay to the same rate as Qari Sadiq used to get, £340 per week. However, after the meeting, Hafiz Ali Akbar, the treasurer, HAA, went against this full committee decision and agreed to give Qari Mahmoud more, without authorization or informing committee, and took money from the Jumu'ah collection before it was counted, every week for 13 weeks. This is a gross violation of his duty as a treasurer. He did not tell anyone, except Ramzan Ibrahim, assistant treasurer, informally. Some committee members knew about this but were either too scared to start the conversation or simply turned a blind eye, although they clearly knew this was wrong. Some complained behind his back but never raised the matter formally. I pressed for the matter to be raised in an official meeting, and eventually, after 3 months, we had one in which Raja Elias was supposed to address the issue as secretary. But when it came to the point to speak out and challenge HAA, he went quiet, and I had to make the challenge. HAA admitted he was wrong to do what he did. This is in the minutes of the meeting. HAA said he did this because Qari Mahmoud said the money wasn't enough for the duties he is taking on. The committee agreed that the reason for giving more money was not the problem, but the way it was done without approval is wrong. The committee took no action against him. This might have been acceptable for a one-off mistake, but this was going on for 13 weeks. Also, if this was the only issue, we could let it go, given HAA admitted he was wrong, but after this more issues arose, see below, which is why I felt the need to speak out. 2. English-speaking Imam. Youth work was a key reason I joined and one of the main reasons we won the election 8 years ago. Part of this was hiring an English-speaking Imam to cater for the youth. But certain senior members of the committee always made the contract unattractive, and so it was difficult to retain an Imam. The last attempt with Imam Zain al. the 21st of July 2022. Abidin is a clear example. The committee offered a very poor contract that would make it hard for anyone to accept. The committee decided he had to work 6 days a week for net pay around £350, and he had to pay for his own accommodation somewhere close to the masjid. He was not allowed to live in one of the masjid properties. This is simply not feasible. He wasn't even allowed to accumulate holidays to take a block of days. Therefore, he would have to visit his family in Birmingham and come back within 24 hours. This just shows that certain influential committee members are not serious about having an imam for the youth. I objected but was outvoted. For the record, I should mention, I myself recommended that Imam Zain's contract should not be renewed. He was on probation, and due to some very inappropriate comments he made in a speech linked to the issue of Afdaliyah, superiority amongst the blessed Sahaba-e-Karam, I felt we should not keep him as Imam. However, the issue of the poor contract Wfia offered him preceded this incident and was not related to it. 3. Islam Qadri, IQ. The whole episode of Islam Qadri has been problematic from the very beginning. IQ first started doing some gatherings and a bit of teaching, Arabic grammar, for free, so no problem there. But then HAA tried to get him into Wfia Madrasa and insisted on Qari Bilal, head teacher, to give him some children to form his class. Wfia madrasa did not need an extra teacher at that time. However, as committee members did not object to using IQ as a teacher, I insisted on him having a DBS check, as is usual practice, before he starts teaching children. HAA called me to say IQ already has a DBS, so we don't need to apply. I said Wfia, as an employer, must do its own due diligence, so he conceded. It also came to light that IQ had some sort of criminal record. IQ originally only had 2 children in his class, her son and another student who was over 16, so no problem. However, before the DBS check was complete, HAA interfered with the madrasa setup and made Qari Bilal arrange some students to join IQ's class. This is when IQ started getting paid officially from the masjid, £150 a week, more than the other madrasa teachers. We had a meeting and managed to stop him teaching, and this time got agreement from HAA he will not teach until his DBS came through and is clear for him to teach children. His DBS finally comes through, and although he has some criminal charges, he is clear to teach children, and so it was then up to the masjid to decide whether to keep him. The committee approved of keeping him even though we didn't need a teacher for madrasa. A little while later his wages increased to £200 per week. There is a real conflict of interest here, as IQ lives in a rented house that is owned by HAA, i.e. he is house tenant. This information should have been declared by HAA right at the beginning, but has never been mentioned. Also, according to the Charity Commission, where there is a conflict like this, the committee member should not be involved in any decisions about that person. Many committee members knew about this landlord situation but have not raised it formally. There has been further interference in the madrasa system, but I will just give one example. A class that was running well under Hafiz Owais, Quran translation class, was given to IQ by HAA when this sort of arrangement is the job of the head teacher. HAA is not even part of the madrasa subcommittee. Hafiz Owais was moved to a newly formed Hifz class. HAA agreed to pay Hafiz Owais more money, as Hifz class requires more time, without going to the committee and discussing it. There was no official meeting about this either, as far as I am aware. I can only conclude that the management committee is dysfunctional. There is an unhealthy power imbalance in the committee, and it is not strong enough to challenge incorrect decisions. The actions and decisions detailed above are not minor issues, involving conflict of interest and gross violations of conduct not expected from any elected official, let alone someone who has the office of treasurer. The committee members need to decide what they do with this information, especially those that have only now been alerted to the internal problems. I would like to state for the record that I have no personal dispute with HAA or IQ or anyone else, alhamdulillah. However, we have an Islamic duty to speak the truth and stand for justice in all matters, but this is even more pertinent when we are working in the house of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. I pray that Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, for the sake of Panjtan Paik, gives the committee the strength and bravery needed to make the right decisions so they will not be called to account for this on the Day of Judgment. Ameen. I will end with the words of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu in Surah Nisa, as a reminder to myself first and then to all of you. O you who believe! Stand out firmly for justice, as witnesses to Allah, even as against yourselves, or your parents, or your kin, family, tribe or clan, and whether it be against rich or poor, for Allah can best protect both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest you swerve, and if you distort justice or decline to do justice, verily Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. Al-Quran 4:135. Wassalam, Irfan Akthar.